Greetings, everybody! Welcome to the Dracovin Empire. It is I, your host and guide here, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, ready to take you to the world of darkness. You're ready to dive back in? We're going to be heading over and learning about some more mages today. And one that is kind of independent, but also not independent, because they're technically part of the Technocracy, but they're secretly not, kind of? It's a confusing thing, but we're talking about the Dalou'laoshi. I might be butchering their name a little bit, so if I am, sorry. Anyway, before we get going, heading to the world of darkness, do make sure, give me a little bit of tip here, make sure you're subscribed on this channel if you aren't, and do the other various YouTube-related algorithm things, liking, ringing the bell, and making sure. Let me know what you think about the Dalou'laoshi, or the 5 elemental dragons. I might just keep calling them that because it's easier for me and my bad ability to pronounce things. But anyway, let's go learn about the Dalou'laoshi, or the 5 elemental dragons. The portal, the world of darkness awaits. Stay close though. Don't want you getting lost and mauled by something. Welcome once more to Mage, and we're heading to Asia this time. Because again, the 5 elemental dragons is technomancers. They're technically part of the Order of Reason / Technocracy, but they aren't the Technocratic Union. Why don't we discuss this? But if you want to look at what sources there are, because these really deal with them, and again, we know some things about what's going on with them in M20, but not major updates, so really we're looking at older editions, and Dragons of the East is a decent one. It's an older book, so it's not as great, and Technocracy Reloaded does a little bit too. The 2 books are fine for kind of introducing this and giving us a lot of information, but I'd recommend them if you want to kind of dive a little deeper than what I'm going into today. The Dalou'laoshi, the 5 elemental dragons. So, they start out on their own. That's the easiest way to say it. And then the Order of Reason / Technocratic Union assimilated them. And even though they are part of the Technocracy, they are also kind of distinct on their own. And it's something that, with the what's going on in the M20 timeline, that secret of, hey, we've been hiding in amongst you, might disappear. And they call the Technocracy the 5 metal dragons. They're the 5 elemental, the 5 metal, yes. Basically, there is basically saying that what's known about the 5 elemental dragons by the Technocracy, the Technocrats, is that Nephatic propaganda. They have no way to work into their records, but the sheer fact is the elemental dragons have been hiding with the Technocracy for some time, having their factions spread throughout the methodologies. Within the entire convention, they have completely infiltrated, definitely within the Asian branch, and outside of that, the Technocracy. They aren't a controlling factor, but they basically, weeded themselves in to keep themselves safe in a lot of ways. To understand them, we do have to break down their patagon a little bit, but the thing is, you really do have to break down each of the elemental dragons on their own. And I didn't want this video to be an hour, so I'm not going to get too deep into the elemental dragons today. People are really interested. I could do some videos on them, the different heads and stuff like that. They're like the shadow versions of the various conventions of the Technocracy. Maybe we'll dive into it. I'll go over some basics then. But there's underlying belief within all of the 5 elemental dragons. Basically, all of them have an understanding that for a greater understanding of random effects, and basically, there's an order to everything. That's it. Even the most chaotic of them, the water dragons, do understand that within those random effects is order. And basically, the Asia, or as they would refer to it as Middle Kingdom, they're running into the older ways of ancient China. The changes there, and the changes from Westerners and their influence do question age-old traditions, and they try to find this area balancing out the old traditions and technology. They work to prevent societies of Asia from turning against each other and forgetting their roots. They were inventors within ancient China, but they've now focused on this idea of combining the technology with tradition. They're trying to find a balance between the ideas of tradition, of old society, of old ways, but still making sure that they can find a way to make it function and work within these massive technological changes. They're still funding and supporting development of new technologies, but they do see the speed of the 5 metal dragons productive as counterproductive. Basically, they see the speed at what the Technocracy develops stuff, the Technocratic Union, as kind of bad, because it's sort of like they're not focused and not being controlled, and it's going out there in all directions, and it's got problems. It's by tapering these great advancements with tradition and understanding them, and taking some time, you process it. The chi of the Middle Kingdom of Asia is disrupted by human atrocities, so meddling with catastrophes like the Week of Nightmares is very important to the 5 elemental dragons. They do not want any more disruptions. So yeah, Week of Nightmares, bad. Chi disruption is responsible, according to them, for natural disasters, economic crashes, and similar events. And if they can control or minimize these events, societal control could also be ensured. Hey, they're very technocratic with the societal control. Yeah. What's their history? They are an ancient people within China. They began as a splinter group of the Wulong, following the Dragon River War. They were disillusioned with ritual high magic and focused on science to help common people who suffered a lot in that conflict. This early group had tumultuous relationships with the Longwa, where they broke away from, whom they supported when Fuzi aided I'm going to butcher this name, Shi Huangdi built his empire, only then to be betrayed by the burning of books, which destroyed much of their early advancements. Yeah. They reached outside of Asia, and they contacted a group of recent mages in the Roman Empire, the Collegium Paracepti. I'm probably butchering that one too. I don't know Latin. These two had a trade relationship over the Silk Road. So yeah, they were already reaching outside of Asia and China. They offered the tribute to from their growing wealth to the Wulong. Basically, yeah, we're a splinter group from you. We want to keep you in good graces. And so they became very powerful on their own. But they did do something important. They kept out of the conflict between the Wangla and the growing ascetic. Every time I say your name wrong. Ascetic Brotherhood. Akashic Brotherhood. Sorry, Akashic Brotherhood. I finally got it right. My brain keeps saying say one thing, but it's a different thing. They stayed out of the Wulong and Akashic Brotherhood conflict, basically. And thanks to these relations, they were invited to the convention of the White Tower, with several of the Wulong, who also basically came along in tow. Basically then, the Elemental Dragons, Wulong, came together to resist the Mongols when they came over China, and they relocated the trading cities on the coast, worked together with Western traders, supported by the Order of Reason, helped their Western allies strengthen colonial power in Asia, and this Technocratic Union, when it came into being, subsumed the Elemental Dragons into their ranks. So the Dalou'laoshi, basically, they claim they were taken by surprise by the rapid technological advancements of the Union, so they couldn't have foreseen the events that happened that way. But basically, the deep connections they had meant that they could be assimilated pretty easily at the time. The Reckoning, that's thrown things into a little bit of that's the big meta plot in the second edition revised with what was going on there. And that's thrown the hierarchy of the Technocracy into disarray, with a civil war kind of going between the New World Order syndicate kind of brewing on the outside. And so the 5 Elemental Dragons are in an interesting place now, getting into this modern day. The shields that they put out to block the fact of their existence by one of their groups, the Spirit Dragons, we'll talk about them, are beginning to fail. Basically, the Union might soon learn that this group that they assimilated has been secretly doing their own thing in their own way beneath them, just as secret allies using them. They're technically allied, but have also been using them, and this is not something they want shown off. So when we talk about their organization, this is an important part because the individual conventions have their own hierarchies in public. Most elemental dragons act as part of a traditional technocratic hierarchy. Individually is frowned upon, and all Dalou'laoshis are expected to work in groups. Every 10 years, each is expected to broaden their knowledge level, with several older members having multiple PhDs in totally different subjects. They are not subject to control. This is a major thing about them. Control is a thing that I kind of is harder to talk about in a lot of ways. If we go by the M20 interpretations, which I kind of like, because it's a little bit more meta-plotty in earlier editions. Basically, it's kind of a level of technocracy. It kind of intents in actions of the technocrats. It's basically what you need control to be is what it is. But when you kind of talk about it, this is leadership. It's the top level, and it basically has control over a lot of it. They determine a lot of things. And because they are not subject to the overarching leadership of the technocracy. Think about that. They are outside the rest of the Technocratic Union. They're in there. They're part of the conventions. They play nice in the conventions. They have their own thing going on. And they're not subject to the upper management. Each member is instead indoctrinated by the Mian Guan at the moment they finish training in a technocratic facility. So it's sort of like, not only you're recruited technocracy, you're recruited into the 5 elemental dragons. So they have 5 methodologies that basically are split upon the conventions. I'm going to go into them by a little bit, but the Black Water Dragons are part of the Syndicate, the Green Wood Dragons, the Progenitors, Red Fire Dragons, Void Engineers, White Metal Dragons, Iteration X, and of course Yellow Earth Dragons, New World Order. We'll get into their names here because there's more names to them, a little more definitions to kind of go into. Let's start with the Water Dragons, or the Taiping Tangao. Probably butchering that name again, apologize. Basically, they're dedicated to the pursuit of individual freedoms and entertainments. They're within the Syndicate. So, they focus on Taiwan, Hong Kong, where they strengthen their financial empire. Their agents are spread across China, and they're often treated as loose cannons. Unlike the other dragons, they're more accepting of rogue elements within their hierarchy, the encouragement of divisive elements, ranging from prostitution to gambling. They're notorious amongst the others, especially for their vices. Their deeds do follow greater goals, though. The modern area, they delight technology, especially complex computers, advanced physical sciences. They study complex systems, a chance to learn a way to order chaos. That's about kind of what they want in a lot of ways. Okay, that's some basics of them. Again, could go into a little bit more depth, but I'm keeping it simple. The Zai Guang, or the Wood Dragons. The Greenwood Dragons. They seek perfection in the human form. They're within the Progenitors. They kind of have this pyramid scheme. They have a leader who, in their case, is always an elderly male. And then that elderly male has 3 distinct underlings, who each have 3 distinct underlings under them, and so on and so forth. So everybody gets 3 underlings in this kind of pyramid scheme that they've got. They are mostly in China, though they have some other agents throughout Asia. They do have a branch within North Korea, where they've been using some of the population for their own experiments. Yeah. For them, disruption of chi within Asia is disastrous. The Week of Nightmares, terrible to them. You know, there was a lot of things that were going on. The building of the Yangtze Dam, the irregularities generated with the chi in Tibet, all are things that are basically difficult for them. Several of them did accept communism, seeing it as similar enough to their own goals. A handful of them begun to approach bureaucracy, as well as further advancement of socialist projects. They work in rural or suburban areas, hoping to shape these communities to their liking and expand in larger cities to establish their own model. So yes, they're unique because they have amicable relationships with all the other dragons, basically. There's some points of contention here and there with acceptance of biotechnology, but yeah, they are basically, and again, do their best. Alright. Let's talk about the Zaibatsu, or the Fire Dragons, the Red Fire Dragons. They are dedicated to the absolute elimination of all supernatural entities. They work with the Void Engineers. Yeah, wizards, demons, hungry dead, shapeshifters, plethora of monsters, especially those that came from the West. They want to bring Olirant back to the tapestry, pave the way for the other projects, murder the crap out of all the others, creatures. They exist hidden behind the facade of the Mikoshi conglomerate and similar corporate giants that have their headquarters in Tokyo. They have styled their hierarchy of a modern company with a CEO at top, down to some unawakened personnel that don't really know the existence of the dragon. Much, louder than much more. They've been expanding also to foreign places like North America. Mikoshi and other public existing companies open to the stock market. Ages monitor each corporation around the clock, take steps to maintain their independence, though, too. So, yeah, they've been centered around Japan, and they've formed an alliance with the failing Court of the Plum Blossoms to work with the ETA class. They study chi from corpses while banning other Shen from entering Japan. They're uncompromising in their goals. Deviations are to be remedied one way or the other, and by force if necessary. So that's kind of where you get an idea of who they are. Our fourth dragon. Our white metal dragons are Sai Seng, our earth dragon. No, oh, sorry. No, these are the Sai... I do like how they're centered. The white metal earth dragon. Sorry. Anyway, they're with Iteration X. They're dedicated to maintaining art, honor, cultural purity. There's a mistake in my notes somewhere here. They see Asian culture as the pinnacle. A lot of them do focus more on things like Japanese culture, but yes, they see all Asian cultures as a pinnacle of human development, with individual focuses within their own group, and they see Western culture as anathema to be resisted. Western technology could be incorporated into traditional frameworks, provided it's done carefully. So they have a very military feel. They're led by 4 generals who oversee the rest of the order with the aid of special officers that are raised to the tide of needs. Most of them are part of family lines that have been members for centuries, intermarrying to keep their bloodlines pure. A splinter remained in Japan after World War II to live among the imperial court, with the current emperor said to be part of, with Emperor Akihito to be said to be part of them, while many of them have relocated to Korea to basically plot their eventual kind of return to that area. So, not gonna lie, you can kind of see where a bunch of these individuals were part of during World War II. Yeah. Anyway. So the secret goals of honor, high expectations, and betrayal is impossible. So, yeah. Those were the ones that were keeping their original home, Japan, out of the rest of the world. Again, the 5 elemental dragons come from different regions within Asia, but all work together for similar things. So. And then finally, we have the Muaogan, the spirit dragons. This is the ones that are dedicated to direct mental control of the self and others to maintain peace and order within the New World Order. They focus the mind instead of technomantic tools, using logic and reason as well as breathing techniques, body pulsar, internal alchemy to shape their own chi. Their current leaderships within Beijing and China. Below them, they're divided into basically special cells from 3 to 10 agents that spread across all of Asia. Within the 5 elemental dragons, the Miao Guan had a task of protecting the members against control and social conditioning that employed by their allies. You have to remember, the Technocratic use social conditioning, they have control, they basically indoctrinate their members in a lot of ways. The Spirit Dragons prevent that. So they have own techniques in ensuring obedience and secrecy. They prevent the other people and do their own thing. Again, from their own recruits to well of other orders, and their methods are kept secret. Every recruit of the Dalou'laoshi undergoes training of the Spirit Dragons to be prepared for their service. They're teachers, inquisitors, interrogators. They're not interested in detailed knowledge, but in motivations. That's important. They have a distaste for modern technology that's well documented, and they look down on their allies for relying on such tools. So they work to keep the technological level of the East Asian nations low, but it's a losing battle, and rural communities gaining access to modern technologies. So, yeah. Some of them have been reported to protect their minds into machines like computers. So it's an interesting thing of they are the old culture, but also new. But yes, there's the, again, sorry if I butchered the name, Dalou'laoshi. Yeah. They're an interesting group because they are part of the Technocracy, the Technocratic Union, but they're also not. They're integrated into every aspect of the Technocracy. They use them to gain information, to share technologies, to have this stuff, but they're outside of control. They're outside of a lot of the basically social engineering that the Technocratic Union uses, and they have their own indoctrinating their members. And each of their own groups within these things works for the conventions, but also has their own goals. And these 5 dragons work together. They have similar goals overall, but they have different directions for it. They do have this idea of making Asia strong. The Middle Kingdom, as they would call it. And that is not necessarily a terrible thing to think about. Again, we look at history and how things are, and you have to think about how they were incorporated into the Technocratic Union. Their allies of the Order of Reason that they were doing trade with and building strength with came over and just assimilated them when they showed up there. Though they were surprised by this, they've taken advantage of it. They're like, well, if we're going to be part of you, we will. But we're going to use you. It's such an interesting juxtaposition in a lot of ways. They are fascinating, but they are also very individual. Again, I could probably dive a little deeper into all of the dragons. I don't know if there would be individual episodes or I'd do like another big episode where I dive deep into each of the dragons on their own. I'm not sure. But each one is a fascinating group that reflects something different about the aspects they have. And each of them has these massive goals. It's like talking about the conventions of the Technocratic Union. Each one's so interesting and has their own history. Again, this is another thing that's seen in Mage. As times changes, groups are driven together. The Dalou'laoshi, being a splinter of the Wulong, wasn't necessarily, when they split off and started learning about technology, one united group. There were 5 groups that said, we want to look to technology, we want to be away from this other group from across Asia. Think about that. So, yeah, again, similar goals, but working together. We see this so many times in so many groups within Mage that people have been just driven together a lot of times. And, find common grounds in their cultures or ideas that build into the various traditions and crafts and stuff like that. And some are still individual, but like think about the 9 traditions. Many of them are amalgams of different groups that have come together. This, as a smaller group, still is an amalgam within an amalgam that is the Technocratic Union. It's fascinating. I hope you've enjoyed diving along with me and learning all about them. But if you want to see more of my things, you can, of course, join me either on Twitch or YouTube. YouTube's all these kind of videos. They're great. Check them out. Love them. I'm sure you'll enjoy them. Make sure you, again, you are subscribed. Make sure you comment. Let me know what you think about all this over on the YouTube side. But if you can't join me, if you're not catching me over there, you can always catch me live. Live's a great place. I record videos like this. I do live plays for all of them, so 8. I'm discussing tabletop, a talk show, Saturdays at 9. Ball of Avanswell, Wednesdays at 8. I didn't say that quite right. I have a lot of stuff over there. Gaming, chatting, hanging with friends, all that kind of stuff. So you're just going to hang out, chat, we discuss some of these things outside of the comics. We can always do that, but again, I know you can always join the comics. YouTube's the best place if you just want to see all this stuff. Check out my social media link below. Discord, Twitter, or /X, Blue Sky. Discord's the best of them. just an idea of when to keep up with all that stuff. So, anyway, brain work good. Anyway, bye. Until the next time we dive into tabletop and something like this, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.